Hello, Gachtina. So, Fáilte Rash, you're very welcome back to your second lesson of 6th year Gaeilge Ord Level. I hope you had a great week. And Mila is to those who were able to send me on your upper vala. Really, really good work and great start. So, great to see it. Okay, so in y'all, we're going to kind of follow the same layout. So, kind of focusing in on different bits, okay, of the exam paper. So we're going to have a look at Cálca Milish, we're going to have a look at another Shrap Picture, and we're going to do a bit of Gramadach as well, okay, because Gramadach is really, really important for all the different aspects of the exam. Um, and as always, if there is anything that you want to like run by me or, check in, that's what we're going to do today. So today is the first day of the check-in box. So I will do this every single week, okay? From now until the very end. Just checking in with you every week, kind of what you're doing at school, kind of how you're feeling, is there anything you're worried about? And it just kind of gives me context then of like maybe what to include in lessons, or maybe make extra resources on and things like that, okay? So make sure to like write whatever you want in that box, because it's good feedback for me. But before we do that, we're going to do our Bríomhra Seanachal agus Nathna Cancha. I suppose just to say before I go into that, if you ever want to look back at the lesson, or if you can't make it, or whatever the case may be, there are all the recordings are in the Zoom folder. So you'll click on it and there'll be the Google Doc with the Zoom link on it. And then there will be a subfolder with recordings, and they will be dated, right? So the title of the document will be the date of the lesson, and then it'll be a YouTube link. And once you go into the link, click on the link, it'll bring you to the recorded lesson. Okay, so never feel like if you miss out on something or anything like that, you can watch any of them back. So I normally aim to have them up like the next day, okay, depending on how quick my internet is. So before we get to the check-in, we're going to do our Bríomhra Seanachal agus Nathna Cancha. Now, anyone who was here last week will remember I went through these because I do these every week, and it's helping to build your vocab, build your list of Seanachal agus build your Nathna Cancha. Okay, so they're worth taking note of. So the two verbs I picked this week are éist, okay, and ahan/fis. So with eight, which obviously means to listen, it's important to know that you must carry it with the révocal le, right? So you can see here like déist me leis on radio, like I listened to the radio. Okay, so you would never say déist me on radio, because grammatically that is incorrect. Okay, so you would see in your feedback that I gave for homework, like when we're talking about school and we're saying like I attend whatever secondary school, so frastalium air. Okay, so the révocal air is connected to that verb, to the verb frastal. Okay, so it's the same with éist. Éist is less. So for example, is maithlam ag éisteacht leis on radio. I hear obviously a lot in orals like is maithlam ag éisteacht le ceol, okay? But a lot of the time I hear is maithlam ag éisteacht ceol. And when the le is missing, I am obviously docking marks. Okay, so that's seems quite simple, but a lot of people make this mistake. Now, this is a good one to know the difference between ahan and fis. Now, ahan is to know a person. Now, how you would normally see it, and I'll write it in Zoom chat, is like tá aithne agam áine, let's just say. It means I know Anya, right? I know her, right? Or if you wanted to say I know her, tá aithne agam urhi. Okay, so there you see the révocal air is actually used with the verb aithne. So I know her, right? So but if I wanted to say like I know what's happening tomorrow, right? It would be tá isagam, okay? Or if I said to you, an bhfuil isagat na sunry, do you know the details? Tá isagam, okay? So fis tá isagam is to do with like information, okay? And then athnia, but in the root of the verb, it's ahen, okay, which you can see there on the weekly document. So that's to know someone. So like an examiner, go on, Gael, an examiner. Oh, Ella can't hear me. Can everyone else hear me? Can you just give a thumbs up to see, can you hear me? It's saying that my mic is on. Okay, Kira can hear me. Yeah, Ella, okay, I'm gonna write back to, okay, if two people can hear me. Right, great. Um, oh, I better hold on a second now. Just write back to her. Uh, it could be an issue on your end. Sorry, I can't multitask. Um, where was I? Yeah, so with FIS. So like if the examiner asked you, oh, an atnia agat erhi, like do you know her? Or an atnia agat an Colleen Shaw, do you know this girl? Tá atnia agam, Neil atnia agam. But then they might say, oh, an Melissa got go will, you know, the Simpsons are on telefish gach seachtain or gach tróna. Do you know that the Simpsons is on every evening? Yeah, tá sagam, no níl sagam, which I know you're probably quite familiar with, but it's good to know the difference between the both. And then my third verb is cap, which is to think. Okay, now obviously, look, really important verb to know. It's one we use so much of. So there's lots of different ways to say think. Okay, so you can have cap, you can have sheelum, you can have well, cap, sheelum, saulig is another one. Now they're all kind of variations. Saulig is another one. Now I'll probably have that one in a few weeks. Is kind of to imagine. I think, I imagine. Okay. There's another one now, and I can't think of it. It's not coming to me. I'm going completely blank. Um, to think. Anyone help me out here and write it in chat. There's definitely another one that I know. Well, obviously, like Sheelum is one, is I think, but there's, thank you. Yes, Swinium. Thank you. I knew there was another one that I was forgetting. Sweenig. Obviously, the one I'm writing there is just the root of the verb. Okay. So sweenig me. Okay, I thought, okay, or I think. Gurmila. So cap is obviously the one we would use the most. But I think it would be worth knowing one other way of saying think just because it's a verb we use a lot. Okay. Now, our shanukal this week is one that I really think you all should make a note of because it can be used in so many different different topics, okay, whether it be school, whether it be pastimes, whether it be studying, like there's so many avenues you can use it for. So clachta a yin and mástrucht, practice makes perfect, okay, loads of different ways you can use that, okay, and it's a nice shanukal and it's an easier one to remember in my personal opinion. And then so then the Nahnakansha is Chamaleshin, which is as well as that, okay? Really common Nahnakansha, okay? I'm sure you've all seen it. However, a lot of the time we use it wrong and we say Chamaleshin instead of lesh, right? So you need to do Chamaleshin, right? So it should be spelt with the lesh as opposed to the le. Okay. Now again, that's a really minor thing, but look, if we're going to be accurate, let's be as accurate as we can possibly be. Okay, so I want you now to check in with me. How did you get on with Gaeilge this week? Maybe what are you doing in school? Like what are you focusing on? And then obviously, what are you most worried about? Sorry, that should be you. What are you most worried about with regards to the Gaeilge exam? And Ella, hopefully you can hear me now. Okay, Kira, you're doing the Ashta, Chloe, Freshen, August, Amy. Okay, so interesting. What Ashta are you doing? What topic? Custos Maractola. Okay. So the cost of living. That can now be a nice broad one too, because you can bring in the course educus, the cost of going to college. Okay, obviously the housing kind of situation, which we had a bit of last year, but you could use a bit of that in it. Um, I'm trying to think what else you could bring into it. Um, are you kind of, is that kind of the avenue you're going down? Are you kind of talking about the cost of education, the cost of living, the housing crisis? Um, are you bringing politics into it? Fibre so síalta agus economiacht. Okay, Ella, so you're doing social problems and social and economic problems. Okay, so you're are you focusing then on like um homelessness, and so violence, all that. So that's kind of a broad essay. And Kira, Course Educus. Okay, yeah, because Course Educus is one of my definitely one of my top ones that I would be focusing on as well. So like a Custos Marachtola one could be like something where you could use a bit of a Course Educus essay and then use a bit of like yeah, like you even use five na socialta, you know? So okay, and then can everyone write what are they most worried about? Now maybe it's the same answer. Maybe it's the Ashta. Or like what do you feel you struggle with the most in the exam? Okay, Capadorocht. Okay, listening, Imni Aaron, Bale Trail, okay. Not be bore if we rail trail because it's actually much easier to get marks than you think. So once you're prepped, you're fine. Okay, Clustishkin's listening. Okay, well, I can tell you now, don't be worried about the listening. It's not worth losing sleep over the listening. Okay, I know they're hard, but don't be stressing about them is what I would say. I'd never want any of my students to be stressing over the listening. Okay. The only way, like if you're sitting at home and you want to try and like study the listening, the only way of studying it really is to be a clachta. So be practicing it. So clachta yin and mostruct, right? And going through the different past papers, which we will do. I actually think we're doing that next week where we're having a look at like key words. Okay. You should find in the drive. I'll actually just show you where it is. Hold on now till I go out here. Sixth year. Now it should be in Anclusishkin. Okay, see this here? This is I did in 2023. Now, obviously, look, needs to be updated with 24 and 25. But I went through all the papers and I made like a word bank basically, right? This is a freebie that I have on my website. However, when I did this, the amount of times a lot of these words were used like time and time again in different years, like you know, upon year. So it is worth having a look at and becoming familiar with it. If it's kind of is it if it's the understanding of the questions is something you feel you might struggle with. Okay, and that's in the Klustishkinch. So going back obviously then to the weekly document. Right. Okay, Germila Mahachorza. So today we're going to have a look at Coca Milish. So Coca Milish would be one that I would be thinking of seeing this year, okay, Aaron Bear, I really would. I think it has a really good chance of coming up, because obviously we didn't see it on the paper last year. So and obviously again it's a Garth gone on as opposed to a piece of prose. So I again that's why I think we could see it there as well this year. And which is great for you because it's a nice one. And it's one that I think people can remember. And I don't think the Gaeilge and the Uckerfuckle, the keywords in it is too hard. So, what can you remember about the Gears Ganon Cócha Milish? Right? So you can be scríomh as Béarla, as Gaeilge, you can just write uckerfuckle keywords, you can write frosy, you can write operty, phrases, sentences, whatever you want. The one thing I do want you to remember though is that Cócha Milish is a Gears Ganon. So just make sure, right, to refer to Cócha Milish as a Gears Ganon. Because I know even ourselves, like myself, can refer to it as like a piece of prose or an or scale or whatever, but it is a short film. Okay? So just little things like that, right? Okay, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to type before I say anything else. Now, like that phrase, Kira, buana chansa mahu. Okay, great stuff here. Okay, so the first thing that I'm seeing, which is really good, is you all have said Fardal. Ba é pól Fardal, bhí an Fardal, bhí pól dal, whichever way you want to write it. Paul was blind, is blind. It doesn't matter if you write it in the past or the present, as long as you just keep with that tense for your answer, okay? Because you wouldn't believe the amount of people that leave out the fact that he's blind, which then makes the story not seem like make any sense. Okay. So another nice phrase, a curristeach, okay, mahu Amy, so annoying Catherine. We're gonna have a look at that in a few minutes. A conch gan stad, right? We have a Noller, Tame asthma, Patrick, yes, Intach ar fad, Malishoch, Chloe, Gama. So again, guys, if you are someone who doesn't like learning off answers, okay, or learning off summaries or whatever the case may be, like keywords then is where it can help you like write a question kind of in your own words but with using the keywords because keywords equals information, okay, about the text, and this is where most of your marks is going for, which I'm going to explain about in a moment. Okay. Come on. So ionach mé husipól ag choch me scór le Catherine. Good. So Boo na Concha, like he's the gift of the gab. Woohee, well done, Leah. Woohee, Catherine. Yeah. Yes, Deisteen, right? So Deisteen's another great word in case I don't forget to mention it. Deisteen, like the Deisteen erm is I had disgust. Okay? Disgust. Deisteen. Right, that's a good word to have. Um, okay, Mahu. So the thing with prose questions, right, is that you need to know the story of Cochemilish, and by knowing the story, you should be able to answer in Kesht, right? Of I who was there on Pauper, because the story doesn't change. You're either going to be asked to talk about Catherine by herself, Paul by herself, by himself, or a mixture of them, okay, from a certain part in the short film. So the only thing you need to remember to do is, if that's the case where you have to only talk about from, like, say, where he gets onto the train, right? So there'd be no talking about Catherine and the mother at the beginning. That's where people get caught out, because obviously if you're going to learn off a summary or a sample answer where it's mentioned about Catherine and her mother at the beginning of the short film, like, but yet the question isn't asking you anything about that, then I would be like inclined to leave that out. Um so that's why it's really important, and this goes for all filiocht prose and literature fresher. So that's like your on three lake and teacher and whatever. Like, learning a sample answer, knowing it really, really well, and then when you read a question, you're like, okay, how am I going to like mold this to like really look like I'm really just answering the question? So by doing that, you might have to remove stuff, which is totally fine. Okay, so it's important to remember, right, that most of the marks are going for what you know about the Gar's gone on. Okay, so that's why I'm saying keywords are really important, phrases, and then obviously the summary, you can't go too wrong, because the summary is basically what the story is about. So it's going to be relatable to the question in some shape or form. So 25 marks is going for Olus, and then 5 marks for Gaeilge. So anytime we see that with regards Gaeilge, what that means is it's like your grammar, your sentence structure, are you talking in, the correct tense the whole way through, so on and so forth. So only 5 marks is going there, where 25 marks is your ability to tell the story while answering the questions. Okay, keywords and verbs. So obviously, like, not just keywords from Cochemilish, but like your bank of verbs is going to help you here to make up, okay, to, I suppose, make up your answer. And again, by including as many verbs as possible is going to show your examiner that you have a wide vocab. Okay, so I want us to have a look at some of these grammar rules within these sentences. Okay, so Catherine was annoying Paul. Okay, actually, so I'll number them 1 to 5. Okay, I want you to now, so what you're going to write in Zoom chat for this one, I want you to pick one of them. Okay, I don't know why my thing does this where it only goes 1 1 1. Okay, so pick, right, we'll go A, B, C. Will it let me do that? No. Okay, anyways, pick one of them. They're all A, brilliant. Pick one of these. And so, anyways, we'll magically number them 1 2 3 4 5, and translate it for me and just write it in Zoom chat to me. Go ma. Well done, Kira. Mahu Ella. And Kira and Ella, feel free to do another one. Well done, Maeve. Well done. Well done, Amy. Now, Amy, there's a little thing to change with that one. And it's got to do with the letter F. So Leah, we that is correct, but we would just get rid of um on. Okay, right. So These are common sentences that I would see a lot of like mistakes with. So sometimes I do see it like with Kulskara, let's just say as well, where people get confused with Urus and Shavus, right? But yet they're trying to make the same point over and over again. And then they're making the same kind of grammar mistake over and over again. And like that, if we want to get a H1, even though like 90% of the marks are going for your OLS, right? You still need to be quite accurate with your grammar. Like your grammar needs to be flawless to a certain extent to get the HE in, okay? So Catherine was annoying Paul, right? So there's two ways you can do this. So Kerr, Catherine, Isteach, Air, Paul, or well, I suppose by right, I would be saying it the second way because it's annoying, right? So Catherine annoyed Paul, right, would be the first one, or V Catherine egg cur isteach air Paul, right? So there's two variations of it there. She moved his inhaler, so Vog, sorry, no father, Vog she a anoler, right? Now, so guys, that's your adiok shalvak, right? So an aller. So just to be aware of your adiok shalvak, we will be going over it at some stage. Now, wool, tame, asthma, air. So it's like asthma attack hit him or hit on him, okay? Wool. Now you will see variations in some of the books, okay, that they use in schools, but this is the one that always used, okay, the wool one. He was a blind man now. So the way Amy said it was ba ar dal a, right? So if we're going to use it that way, we would just have to say ba ar dal a, okay? Or the way Kira said it, far dal um ob a, right? Or ba a, okay? So, there's all the different ways of saying it. Sorry now, it stopped typing for me. A. So that's like just an inverted way of saying it, okay? Um they're both correct. He now, if it's present tense though, he is a childish, foolish person. So this one was is, which is obviously present tense. So is, right? Dinner, Páistúil for childish, okay? And then you could say like Amadoch a, because he is a man. If the person was a girl, it would be e. If it's people, it would be iad. Okay. So again, that's the grammar rule we call on couple. Really, really important to have a grasp of it to use. Okay. And it's really all just about knowing your inchkana, right? Your genders. Okay, so now let's have a look at the Cóca Millish sample answer. Okay, so this is a question that came up in 2018. Okay, so good while ago. So remember, and you can see here, right, good while ago, but you'll actually see like if you look at the last time it came up, so like 22, 23, that you will see the differences in the question isn't all that much. Okay, so this question here is dinna fui mi chumas Paul sa scanan Cóca Millish. So Paul is a disabled person in the film Cóca Millish. Ach ní hillan sé mór an trua the chás ón locht fécana. But he doesn't earn much pity from the case of the audience, okay, for his case from the audience. Discuss this statement, right? Now, the way I turned it on his head was like he didn't earn a lot of pity from the audience because he was, really chatty, really annoying, Catherine on the train. But then I changed my answer then at the end. So you're going to see this, right? So I'm actually going to talk through this for the sake of if because it's recorded, you'll be able to go back and like make your notey whenever you want, right? So as I said last week, when we get this statement of discuss this statement, you either have to agree or disagree. So I agree completely with this statement. Is léir go bhfuil duine faoi mí cumas é Paul sa gearrscan an seo. So again, I am referring to the question. So I'm like clockwork, right? I know exactly what to do. Address the statement and then obviously like refer back to the question. It's clear that the person that Paul is a disabled person in this short film when we see Paul coming into the carriage with his walking stick. He is blind, as we notice from the start of the film, and on top of that, he has really bad asthma. Not only that, but he is innocent and vulnerable. Guys, that's a great word. Nave er holds vulnerable. He is an innocent and vulnerable person. I think that he believes that everyone on this life, in this life, is kind and merciful. Okay, Trokerok is merciful. All fuck great Nat Nikancha. However, he doesn't earn much pity from the case of the audience because but he unlocked the small VR. So his biggest fault, right? His biggest fault was that he was very chatty and he didn't understand that he was annoying everyone around him. Okay. So again, like if the question comes up slightly differently, you could tweak your opening paragraph a bit, and it really all just depends, like small little tweaks to kind of make it look like it's really fully referencing the question, and you should be absolutely fine. Okay, and that will just take practice. When you're studying Cóca make sure to look back at all the past exam questions and then see what you're learning, like whether it be a sample answer. Well, hopefully it will be a sample answer. Will that fit into the question that's being asked? Okay, so guys, from here then, right? So this is kind of like really focusing in on the question. Then from here is literally just a summary of the story, okay? So like from the minute Paul comes into the garage, he doesn't stop talking, into the carriage, sorry. He filled the carriage with noise. When he sat down beside a young woman, the young woman Catherine, she wasn't happy at all. Erharbe, such a great phrase. He annoyed Catherine a lot with his non-stop chatter. She would like to be free from life for a while without her mother. He questions Catherine about everything, and she explained that he had asthma and that he was safe. Sorry, and that his health wasn't good, but he was on radio talking about asthma when he was 6 years old. Okay, sorry, I missed one there. He questions Catherine about everything, and he explained that he had asthma, right? So again, what am I doing here, Jorja? I am giving details, right? Detail, detail, detail. Olus, 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 right? Now, here, what you could do. So, if you're a student who you feel you constantly go off track, which I know I was in sixth year, because you're trying to get so much information down on the page that you can like you can kind of be like, what was the question again? That's then where you can kind of like refer back to the question. I know I was saying that to some of you at your homework. Okay, so Catherine became impatient. She wasn't happy to get the coffee and later to put the sugar into his coffee for him. She is an unmerciful and uncharitable person. Okay, without surprise. Worse than that, she was malicious when she told the lie about the view that is seen outside and that she was enjoying annoying the blind man. It's in a so Catherine is a cruel person towards disabled Paul. Okay. On top of that, with the lie about the worm in the cake, Catherine continued telling lies to him when it is seen that the poor man was upset Trina Kayla agus Scanra has scared. Bhí an tulkas le fecal galorger inchi an shaw. So the evil is seen strongly within her here. Okay. And then you can see now I'm trying to refer. So in the back of my head at start and ends of paragraphs, I'm always very conscious that I need to refer to the question at some stage. Luckily enough, 9 times out of 10, it will fit kind of right in at the beginning of a paragraph, but sometimes it may be the end of the paragraph. Okay. So, on the other hand, it is thought that the outlook of the audience is changing here when Catherine moved the inhaler and when Paul took a massive asthma attack. So, what I'm saying there is, even though in the question it's saying, oh, he doesn't earn a lot of pity from the audience, right? And then you're like, oh God, how am I going to swing this? Because we're all meant to feel sorry for Paul because, for boss, Egondera. but I'm just trying to kind of spin it, right? Even though I'm like, oh yeah, well, you said he didn't earn a lot of pity, but now I'm think it's changing, right? So that shows that I'm really engaging with the question, even on a higher level than kind of the normal student would be, because I'm like taking it within my own hands and really showing the examiner I know what's being asked of me. Okay. So you can see there. I literally tell the story, okay, so blah 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 blah, and then just mention the question at the end and how um so it's clear that Catherine is a murderer in the end, but she is sly and clever with the inhaler to put the inhaler back on the table before Sulla is before she leaves. She is malicious and evil also, and it is shown in this short story. Overall, I think that the audience have pity for Paul at the end. Okay, so obviously contradicting my statement, but I've made it kind of clear throughout the answer. So that's that. So what I would say is if you are someone where you're like, look, I really just want like a sample answer to learn off, okay, get to grips with, really understand it, really know it well, know my keywords well, then I would be sending you this, okay, and then telling you to practice past exam papers and see how you can use all this information. You might have to leave out certain little bits, but how you can use this to answer any exam question. Okay, that is what I would be asking of you to do, like in time that you would have to go back and study. Really, really good study tool and build your confidence as well. Okay, so were there any keywords, just quickly, you can all write in this box, okay? Was there any keywords there that you can remember that stood out to you that you feel like you would need to write down and take note of? I love that one. Ag bra ar chini ella, depending on other people. Brilliant. Well done, Acharza. Paul didn't deserve his death. Good. Yes, on Altra, the nurse, agus awam, cruólach, témasma. Good. Brilliant stuff. Dún Varvor, yeah. Mashiv, yeah. So impatient, lonely, yeah. So like even the nice phrase like I can't ganstad ganstain never holds up. Yeah, I know that's a hard one to spell. Vulnerable, sinanta, innocent. Okay. Clicky Inchna, yes, mind games, another brilliant one. Clicky Inchna, love that. Ní carhanach, yeah. Me hummus, yeah. Fui me hummus. I would put fui with it. It kind of comes as a phrase. Okay, Íntagar fad. So guys, again, you're building up. Like that's what I mean. Like building up your bank of, and like you don't have to learn my sample answer. Like if you wanted to take bits from it and make your own sample answer with like, more keywords that you've learned that your teacher has given you, and then try. And when you're confident, when you're like, yeah, I'm confident with that my sample answer. I know, like I'm confident about learning it. I'm happy to learn it. Then you need to practice using that sample answer with loads of different exam questions. That's the key to studying. Okay. So I'm going to bugger eye now to useful sentence starters and builder phrases. So we started this with poetry last week and I wanted to add to it, okay? So I know I touched on last week where I said obviously on Fila is the poet, but now on Tudor is the author. So we would be using that when talking about Cochamilesh, or like any of the prose or your Litrucht Thresha. So you're on Trill, your Hignot Term, your Gotha. So tugging onto their Lyricus Intuch doing. So the author gives us great insight. Okay. And then obviously so in this story. The author references, okay, whatever image it might be, whatever theme, a person, a thing, okay. So now here, similar to last week, okay, I have a more verbs, okay, that you can use when you're writing pieces about, say, like whether it be prose, filiocht, or literature fascia. So this one is, so every one of them is the author. So the author admits, okay, great verb. The author agrees. So there's your intake from last week. The author puts emphasis on. The author thinks that, okay, and this is written in the present tense. Aaron Lovella, so here's some more Nahna on the other hand. Air One on one side. Okay, playing on Tudor, the author discusses. And E Kasulukle. So last week I focused a lot on Kuddersnuk. We had it again today with contrast. This is in, I suppose, in comparison to or in similarity. Or similarly, I suppose we would say in proper English. Okay, or in comparison with. Okay. So again, I just think that using different verbs can be really, really useful for any question. You can bring these verbs into your oral work, okay? You can also bring them in to well, your essays if you wanted to. And you can bring them into your sample answers too. Okay, they will, they'll work in when you're talking about any piece of prose, no piece of filiochta. Okay, so again, just before we move on to our oral work, okay, our Shra Tour, we looked at Amsher Katja last week. Now I want to kind of touch on the Amsher Loichrock. Okay, so I'm going to give you like 2 minutes to try and do as many of these as you can, and then I'm going to talk about them. So just remember that everything in the Amsher Loichrock, right, takes an ending. Every single thing takes an ending in the Amsher Loichrock. That's the first thing that you must remember. Okay, so I'm going to give you like 2 minutes on this. Okay, Horda. So, yeah, we're pretty much there. Just Coupler Road that I want to go through, okay? But before I go and give you the fragri, right, the answers, just want to bring your attention. So remember, this is in the Grammar folder, okay, on the drive. So just bring your attention to the Amsher Loichrook endings, right? So as I said, everything in the Amsher Loichrook gets an ending. Okay. Now, what's really important to remember when we're using the Amshaloi hook is we do not use the pronoun may. Probably the most important thing. Okay, especially if you want a high grade Oscailga, you should be avoiding using like Imrium may. Okay, rookie mistake. Don't do that. And then when it comes to writing it, we don't use shevu, okay, either. Okay, we can't hear that as much, but we don't use a shevu unless you are putting something in the negative. Ni charan she would have a shevu in it, for example. Questions and negatives are different to the past tense. So you have your on plus an arrow. I'll go through the arrows now in a minute. Ni plus a H. And then the way I break it down, okay, so would have been introduced to the boxes last week. But for the Amsher Loihruk, it's splitting into three parts. Me, Shin, and Ella. Okay, myself, we, and other. And you can see everything that comes under other. Tu, she, shiv, shiad, right? So basically everything bar me and Shin. So that kind of makes it easier, right? Once you know like which box it means what thing. So the only thing that changes with, we'll say, the may endings, from one syllable to two syllable, is that it gets a father. Same with shin, okay? All that's changing is the fathers. And then Ella, okay, is ANN or EANN, and then AI for the ONN, I for the ONN. So they're the ones that look the most different, right? Are the Ella endings. Um, so remember, guys, what I said before, just to touch base on it. Quail la quail, Latin la Latin. So slender with slender, broad with broad. So that's why we have two in every box. One begins with a broad vowel, one begins with a slender vowel always. Our broad vowels being A, O, and U, our slender vowels being I and E. Okay. And then just I suppose to talk about the arrows, right? So there's seven arrows in the Irish language and they follow these letters. So obviously, M, B, G, C, N, D, B, H, F, N, G, B, P, D, T, right? My brother got caught not doing dishes tonight. Nobody gets blueberry pie before he finishes, is maybe the rule. Ye all know. So it's just important. The arrow only comes into effect when we're talking in question format, because sometimes I see people use them all the time. That's not what you're meant to do. And if you have a verb that's a question and you can't, and it doesn't take an arrow, you just leave it as it is. Okay. So let's have a look. But these were quite good, right? So with Eoch, okay, so it's one syllable and it's broad because O is the last vowel. So it's Eoch and She, right? On till Shiv, so on plus an arrow because T takes a D. Sorry, I should be over here. And then EANN because it's one syllable on Dylan Shiv. Now, add big she. So obviously, if this was past tense, it would get a D apostrophe, but because it's present, it doesn't. So we're taking off the AIGH and we're putting on a two syllable broad ending, advian she. Similarly here with this one, but now we're putting on a shin ending, so or the image. Okay, or the image. And then on Cur Shead would be on Gurren Shead. Okay, GC and then ending. So some people get confused when they add the arrow, they think that's all they do and they don't add the end. And I see that all the time as well. With the Amsher or Loihruk and Oishnuk, you must add both. Okay. Right. So you're pretty good at them. I'm not too worried with the Amsher Loihruk. Okay, and again, it's just been able to identify, like hearing the Amsher Loihruk when the examiner in the oral is asking you, Keshtana, no, just Einrods, okay, says San Amsher Loihruk. Right, so on track pictor, so Ibrahim Rilacha na Scola. Sorry, it's not Ibrahim, Ivra 3, Tobroner. That should be Ivra 3. Right. Describe the following picture sentence. Be creative and use lots of different verbs. Let's aim for 5 sentences per picture. So I get a lot of grief when I say, a H1 student should be between 6 and 7 sentences, but that is kind of what we're looking for. But it doesn't have to be every picture. That's just a guideline. Your perfect medium is like anything from 4 to 6, depending on how much or how little you can say about that picture. Or if you can't form sentences, don't worry. I want you to write down as many verbs and keywords you can think of for the picture you've been given. So what I've done is, I've put Amy, Maeve, Ella, August, Chloe, Victor, Hain, August, Daniela, Victor, Do. Okay, so again, I'm going to give you like 2 minutes, okay, just to think of a few opportunity to write here. So what I would say is kind of my tips would be to always try and open it the same if you want to make things easier for you, and then that's just a sentence you don't have to think about, and it's kind of helps you like kind of calm yourself. Would be like Lo ina aviem. So it was Friday. Okay, it could have been Friday at school. Okay. And remember, guys, just from reading what you're reading here, like we see, okay? I have no issue with using we see. However, in the guidelines from the chief examiner for the orals, chief oral examiner, our students should be telling the Shapik like a story, not so much like pointing at things and telling about what's happening, okay? So just to be aware of that, okay? So we want to try and create this story. Yeah, and actually, I'll write some ones down here in chat as you are doing that. Doger is a good one. I'm not sure if anyone has used it yet. Doger on pre-image, yeah. The principal announced. Doger. I like that. Yeah, could you on Chinol shock the new weekly assembly? Come on. So Chinol is a good word. Assembly. Good Ella. Roinch Bootley. Some boys. Good. Roinch is some of. Oh, I like that, Kira. They showed their unhappiness. So I would just edit that sentence. Hug Muntor Ella fui yera na Kalini instead of na Kalini fui yera. So hug, then obviously whoever the person is, and then fui yera, and then whenever they noticed. Well done, guys. And you know what's really good here? What I can see, which is the most important thing, you're using lots of different verbs. So if I can get you in on that habit now, okay, like I'm on to a winner for a few months' time. I would be entitled to say maybe Vrish Tridjamach, like a fight broke out, I Cúnaíonn close, nice use of the Tishel Ginnadach, Mahu. So what I would say is like if you're trying to like learn your traffic doors is I would like learn kind of the base sentences first, and then if you wanted to like bring in the shannuckles and bring in the trying to include maybe the breacher say or the look or whatever. But it's another way to look at it is, oh well, just learn it all in one piece and I'm good to go. So again, it'd be personal preference for you, right? So I'm just going to use like these two down here as an example, okay? So, like what happened in the one before it, okay, so they'd gotten in trouble, okay, so on law Dargion, right, and again, you can just write this down how you hear it. Spelling doesn't matter because obviously it's an oral examination. So I'm looking at this picture first, right? On law Dargion, so the next day, Wúl na tisio mohori leis an príomhaide sa scoil, okay? Bhí siad ag feitheamh sa seomra feitheamh ar dús. So they were waiting in the waiting room at first. Thosaí na daltaí ag cur alais le nerv. Okay, so ag cur alais mar bhí siad nervíseach. So the students started sweating. I'll write that phrase down. Ag cur alais. Because they were nervous. You could bulk it up. You could say vrat in a one chin, okay, or you could say vrat on chanis an air, okay, or vrat gachtin on chanis an air, or you could say vrahu if you were using the breaker air on chanis air. So the tension was felt in the air. So we don't know who felt it, but it was felt. Okay. So the tension was felt in the air. So Hussy she they conch leis on brevidja. They started talking with the principal. Dinna she on scale dove. So she told them the crack, she told them the story. Okay. August gan iris a v she er bullia le Liam. Okay, they were bullying with Liam. Okay, so like even with that, that's like five sentences, if not six. So again, they don't need to be really long. They can be quick and snappy and clear and concise. That's what we're looking for. The more clear and concise you can be, the easier it's going to be for me to give you the marks in the exam. Okay, but well done. I feel like you're quite, you're quite good at that tra. And remember, it is worth noting as well, like looking at the 10 tra or the 20 tras and seeing what 10 works best for you. Okay. Because that's going to be different for everyone. And even like I in the booklet have tried to pick out ones that I think are easier, but they might just only be easier to me. They mightn't be to you. Okay. Now, important thing to consider as well is your questionnaire, right? Your question starters. So remember, guys, you have to ask the examiner three questions. They ask you three questions. Okay. These questions are worth 10 marks, but the beauty of them is they don't need to be really, really well thought about. I answered extremely accurately all these things to get a measly 10 marks. But you still want to get the 10 marks and at the same time. So when the examiner asks you a question, even if you give back a one word answer, but the one word answer relates to what she's asked you, she can give you the mark. So what I would say is learning like five sentences should cover you for all traffic tours. Okay. So for example, Có rau Nadalti sa school. Where were the children in school? Okay, you can change that to Có rau na Colony, Có rau na Bootley, depending on what traffic tour you're doing. Okay, Cévid Aragid, Cada Horla is an easy one. I'll write that in chat. Cada Horla, what happened in picture or whatever. Cada Horla is what happened. Okay, so and what I would say is try and ask slightly harder questions or like obvious questions that might be hard because you can be guaranteed the examiner will ask you the harder questions kind of off the cuff ones if if you are kind of showing signs that like that you've obviously done a very good script and you're given good Gaeilge. So the way I would do that is if you ask them harder questions, okay, or slightly harder than maybe what you had anticipated, it just means they will probably ask you the more straightforward, easier questions based on that track. Because remember, they're thinking of them in their head as well. They don't have anything in front of them to be just asking you questions on it. So three and three. Okay, so that's what I want you to remember. So for your Obervala Corgi, I'm just actually going to go in and look at it quickly to show you. So I think I explained last week. So if you, yeah, that's what I want to explain. If you copy and paste this, so you'll see me doing it here, and it's copying. right? I have a copy, and all you need to do is just like drag it to your folder. Okay, so make sure that we were not all working on the same document. So this document this year, this week, we're going to have a look at a Cócamillis question, okay, to kind of back up our learning. And then we're going to do Ceistena for the Shrap Pictor that we had a look at today. So with regards to the Ceistena, right, I've given you question starters to help you maybe create a question, all right. But these question starters will also come in handy for the listening when maybe you're practicing the listening or it's something you're worried about. Maybe make note of some of these question starters, because I can guarantee you're going to see at least 6 or 7 of them in the paper in June. Okay. Uh, and just a reminder that obviously homework, if you can, have it in by Thursday. There is weeks where I don't get correcting it on Friday, so if you upload it, like there's a good chance I will still correct it even if it's late, because I won't really know the difference. But obviously I am, when I get into a proper routine, will hopefully correct them on like a Friday morning. So that's why kind of Thursday is the cutoff, if at all possible. So as always, Accordia, great work this week. I'm really happy with your traffic tours. I think they're really well done, and I don't think there'll be any bother. But I want you to start practicing them aloud, even if it is like brushing your teeth, kind of, saying it aloud or thinking about it in your head, okay, as opposed to just constantly writing them. We need to get the confidence there with regards, saying it aloud, because that's a very foreign thing for a lot of us to do. Modula Gaeilge sa skull. Okay, and like really, really good work. I'm happy with the Amshaloi, and you do actually have really good key vocab for Cócamillis too. So all round great class. Okay, we will be back next week, same time, same place. As always, if you've anything else in the meantime, please do let me know. But if not, I will see you all then. Gurmila Mahagat, and have a great week. Slán.